Similarly happened in case of private equity funds or offshore funds. 3, 4, 5 important cases came, and in each of the cases, SEBI, quite well, it saw the call records and found from the mobile records, from the phone records, in some cases even found tape recording, and saw that what was going on. Interesting how it became was that those people contended that front running can be punished only for stock brokerage, not for other entities. And initially SEBI punished them, said over and over. Then said for some reason changed its view and they said no, they are punishing. So as on today, now the matter is before the Supreme Court, but as on today, as per SAT's 2 decisions, front running is an offence and it will apply not just to intermediaries. So just take an example that a client mentions in passing that I am going to buy 20 lakhs of so and so shares. If you go and buy those shares, you may not be technically an insider. Insider trading regulation we'll see later on is if you are professionally connected with that particular company, then you should not be. But suppose he he's an investor, your client is an investor and mentions in passing, and then you go and buy the shares first. That is front running and it could be. In fact, the joke was, or this argument was made before the courts was that in case of Harshad Mehta and Ketan Parekh's time, whatever they bought could move the market. So it was said that people were bribed, his drivers was bribed, his liftman was bribed, that if you overhear something, mentioning some company, you just tip us, we will pay. So that again they will do some sort of front running. Technically speaking, although the law is not so strongly made, it is front running, and incidentally SEBI latest act, which got finalized again in August 2014, it has retrospectively amended the law. So what SAT had said in certain matters, now the SEBI regulations and this act, now they have retrospectively amended the law and said that any type of front running, not just by an intermediary or stockbroker, any type of front running will be a fraud and therefore unfair practice and therefore punishable. There are various types of other things, price fixing, false disclosures. The more the creative the mind, the more frauds they have done. These are all punishable if you go through various regulations, synchronized deal, self deal. There are people there is a group of people that A will buy from B will buy from C, and there will be circular trades just to create volumes, hike up the price, and then make other people buy the shares and then you sell your shares. The punishment of FUTB regulation is disgorgement. Disgorgement means suppose I made an illegitimate profit by doing such wrong things of let's say 1 crore rupees. I may be levied penalty that is up to 3 times the profits made or 25 crores, whichever is higher. That is the amount. But my profits which are made, that will be disgorged. It means the profits will be taken away from me. So I should be made what was that I was before. Disgorgement was a controversial thing whether SEBI had powers or not. Now again SEBI Act has amended, and disgorgement is very clearly made part of the law of powers of SEBI that they can disgorge the profits which are made. If you recollect the IPOs, so-called IPO scam, public issue scam, where Rupal Lane, Panchal, and all those cases where they did multiple share application, the question was whether SEBI had powers of disgorging the profits. Now I think whether those controversies, let's see how they go. The new law certainly gives them power. Penalties, their debarment is another comment. If you do any of these type of 5 years, 3 years, you will be debarred from accessing the stock market. There will be prosecution also. Many entities are under prosecution. ICDR regulations is another important regulations. And if you are a listed entity and if you want to make a public issue, rights issue, preferential issue, bonus issue, these are the regulations which you have to meticulously comply. There are various conditions. Public and rights issue are of course they have the most detailed compliance, but preferential issue and bonus issue also you have to go through the chapters of these regulations. Just another point is that these were guidelines in the form of guidelines, and whether guidelines do have the status of law, that was questioned. There are a couple of tribunal decisions say yet they have some partial legal status, but finally SEBI got fed up. In 2009 they made it into regulation. And so now there is not much doubt if you violate this, there are various punitive consequences still follow. Buyback of securities, they came in 2002 when the Companies Act was amended and powers of buyback of shares and various methods of buybacks are allowed. You can have the normal way is reverse rights, that where just like a rights issue of shares where I offer shares to everybody. In case of reverse rights, I ask them that if you have got 2,000 shares, I am buying 25% of your shares. So if you want to offer 500 of your shares, and then we will buy back those shares at so and so price which is specified, or it could be done to the open market. So it means I'll say, okay, I am going to buy 10% of the shares of the share capital in the open market over a period of 1 year, whenever the opportunity arises. The advantage is that one is that the promoters can consolidate their holding. So if my holding is, let's say, 55% now, by doing a buyback in which I do not participate, I will be able to increase my holding of the reduced capital. So if the capital is 100 crores and my holding is 55 crores, if the capital reduces by way of buyback to 90 crores, 55 of 90 is a higher percentage as compared to 55 of 100. If I got the other objective is if I got excess funds, I am returning them by way of buyback, or I am just giving market support. The price has gone down so much, so by doing buyback, I go to the open market myself and buy the shares and give them market support. Sweat equity could have been a very good way of giving shares to people who have got intellectual property, maybe some ideas, maybe some products, and which do not have immediate market, but all these software and so on. So that was the idea, was that if somebody has come to you and if you feel that this the product which he has got, the idea which he has got is so valuable, I should give them a share of, let's say, 5%, 10%. That is a concept of sweat. And according to him, that person could have worked for you for nearly 5 or 10 years, and you want to really reward him for the value which he has created. That was sweat equity. But when they were made in 2002, there were too much concerns expressed that this will be misused and people will be given shares who are just free of cost, and the value of the company will get diluted. So for some reason, if you go through the regulations, they are so strictly drafted that, as far as I know, nobody has been able to make a commercial proposition out of it. The pricing, the valuation, the issue terms, the registration share, the way it is accounted, and I have to come to the taxation, which is again adverse, the remuneration limits which are there, and so on. So this is really failed. And as far as I know, there could be somebody, but as far as I know, not a single company has taken advantage of these regulations. They are just dead products. Delisting regulations. Delisting means this is how if I come into SEBI's clutches when I make a public issue of my shares and I become a listed company. Now suppose for some reason, and this is probably could become popular because of now the law has become so strict that Companies Act has become very strict, corporate governance by SEBI, that has become very strict. So people would want to go away from the stock market. There may be companies who are unable to find independent directors. Every company has to have so much of independent directors, and those independent directors are such large liability. So delisting regulations have been there since some time. So probably this may come into play again. Again, here the SEBI has drafted them quite strictly, but that is only by learning how companies misused. They used to have forced buyback, for example. That's a separate subject by itself. But they used to buy back the shares of the shareholders on a forced basis at a low price. So SEBI put lot of conditions. So in a way, they are not by investors because they get the value. They get a higher value by through delisting, and some of them they are told that they make even cartels. And listed companies and promoters, they hate them. Broadly, the regulations there are is, first of all, delisting can be carried out only by the promoters. So company cannot carry out a buyback and delist the shares. So suppose the company, in a company, 75% of the shares are held by promoters, 25% is held by the company. The company cannot say, okay, I am buying out the remaining 25%, then it becomes 100% owned promoter company and we will delist. That is not possible. The remaining 25% has to be bought out by the promoters out of his own funds or borrowed funds, but he has to raise that money. For that, there are various conditions. One, for example, is that there has to be a majority of minority approval before even going for delisting. Suppose 60% is held by the promoters, remaining is held by the 40% is held by non-promoters, that is the public. Two-thirds of this public holding, they have to approve. The number of people who vote for has to be at least twice the number who oppose. So out of the 40%, suppose everybody votes, then two-thirds of these have to vote in favor. So you cannot just pass a special resolution. 75%, out of it 60% is held by the promoters, you need only 15%. You need out of that 40%, two-thirds have to vote in favor. Then only the first step will go ahead. Or two-thirds of them, anything less than two-thirds the resolution is there, delisting is shared at that moment itself. Then there are various milestones. To take that example again, 60% that is held by the promoters, 40% is held by the public. They have to ensure that the holding reaches at least 90% or 50% of the public holding. So in this particular case, 40% is held by the public, 20% of that is 50%. So 60 plus either 20% become 80% or 90%. So 90% in that particular case will have to be reached, then only the delisting will be there. So if the promoters are able to buy out most of the public holding to reach 90%, then delisting will take place, and for that it has to offer a fair price. Then only those, because the delisting is voluntary. I cannot be forced to give up my shares. So if an attractive price is given, I will offer my shares, the promoters will reach 90%, then delisting will take place. So, what has happened is that there have been recent cases, the most recent case is AstraZeneca, they tried to avoid, or at least SEBI is alleging that they tried to avoid. What they did was, suppose the promoters are holding, let's say, 87%. Normally 75% is normally allowed, but there have been cases where in the transitional period people are holding higher percentage. Suppose 85% is there. So what they were supposed to reduce their holding to 75% by a specified time. What they did was, or what SEBI alleged they did was, that from 85%, 10% they divested in the open market by way of an offer for sale. That 10% they cleverly placed with friendly investors. They placed it with friendly investors, their holding became 75%. Now they were supposed to buy only 15% to reach 90%. So what would have happened is, in that particular case, the voting, they would have passed, because 10% was friendly investors. If they got another 5% or whatever the two-thirds required, they finished the voting, and even the milestone of 90%, because the 10% they could have bought from their friendly investors and got 5% more and finished the delisting. So SEBI initially issued an order. Now in this particular case, the facts were not very clear, and that only SEBI suspected that they will use this for delisting. There was too much in the press. So SEBI issued an order saying that stock exchange will have to monitor this particular transaction very closely. If there is a delisting, you see who has offered. So if those so-called friendly investors have offered, then stop the delisting. Anyway, that is about this is AstraZeneca is not the only one. 2-3 other cases were in 1 or 2 cases SEBI could not prove, but that is what happens. Then we have about 3 sets of recently made regulation. Portfolio managers slightly older, but there are 3 sets of regulations. Investment advisors and research analysts are the most recent. The reason for me to highlight this is that these are very specialized regulations. In fact, investment advisors are to create a professional advisors in place of today. Most of the, if you see in the financial market, most of the agents are marketeers. People sell mutual fund products, or they sell insurance policies, or they sell those type of products, or they sell shares, and they get commission brokerage. And therefore, the point was that in such cases, the loyalty of such person was not with their clients, but really with the entities which is giving them commission. So if a mutual fund is giving me 2% commission, one way or the other, then my loyalty is with them. So I will try to push that product in which I get the most commission. So investment directors, this category, advisors, the category was created to have people who will give professional advice and get professional fees, and they will not market any product. For some reason this is not picked up. I am told that the number is 10 or 20 people have only registered. Perhaps because we are not used to, we may pay doctor his fees or chartered accountant his fees, lawyer his fees, but somehow we are unable to pay investment advisors the fees. Research analyst is something very recent, and portfolio managers. One point here is that it may happen, if you see the definition of investment advisors and research analysts, it is so wide that it is possible that some of the things which a chartered accountant may do might fall under this. For example, a client may come to you and say that should I invest in this particular company, and say okay, give me the balance sheet, give me the accounts, let me study, and I am giving you an advice. Whether it could amount to investment advisor or research analyst, that is something which you have to careful and read and ensure that we don't violate, because if you raise a bill, give a written report and give professional advice, you might end up violating these regulations. The idea in case of investment advisors was to exclude those entities which are already registered elsewhere, like chartered accountants, but somehow this has not come out well in the law. Research analyst, unfortunately there is no clear intention, and you might end up violating this particular law. So it's at least worth reading it once to ensure that whatever we do in our practice does not violate. Collective investment scheme is one of the, if you see every week there are 1 or 2 entities against which orders are passed, and sometimes we are really scared that so many entities are engaged who raise funds and then run away. The Sharda scam is, in fact, although it is so much coming in the news, it's a very, very small percentage of the total number of collective investment schemes. We have heard of teak schemes, we have heard of goat farming, and we have heard of so many things. But in reality, so many companies have raised money in hundreds and thousands of crores. And what happens is in almost all these cases, we have paid commission ranging from 10% to 60% of the amounts raised. So there is nothing left in the company. The remaining amount has been spent by the promoters, and companies are getting caught. In most of the cases, the money is already gone. Now SEBI is just banning them. In some cases, they are prosecuting them. I'm really surprised that so many companies are there. I don't know what the auditors were doing when they are signing the reports. That how they were. This law has come in 1989, and as far as I know, only one company registered as a collective investment scheme, and even that particular company was not able to really do the business. They did not introduce any scheme. They just registered. Everybody else who is engaged in this is an unregistered entity, and they've been raising money. And just go to SEBI site. In the last 1 month, I'm sure 8 to 10 companies orders would have come. Probably SEBI is not registering because the laws are so stringent. So much conditions are put that it is very difficult for any entity to register. But that about the intention of these so-called CIS is not really to register, but just to raise money, pay huge commission to their agents, and then go away with their, Just two groups of these schemes are worth highlighting. Time-sharing schemes, like one recent decision has come out in case of PAN cards. Holiday sharing, like Club Mahindra and so on. Whether these are governed. So SEBI had, in PAN cards case about 10 years back, it first started the investigation, then it stopped it, and then the Supreme Court in case of PGF, collective scheme, the decision came, and which seemed to give power to SEBI to govern even these people. So SEBI issued a direction against it, which stopped the time sharing business. Time sharing, as hotels, resorts are there where you can book 1 week of holiday each year and go to any hotel like Club Mahindra and so on. So SEBI said that you stop your scheme, give your money out back to all the investors or your customers, clients, and so on. This particular entity went to the SET, and SET said that your order is it overturned the order and asked SEBI to investigate further and not pass. It was an interim order. So the time sharing schemes is again slightly under in a grey area right now. Let's see SEBI what it does in case of PAN cards. Gold investment scheme was another event that's going on even today. That you might read so many very leading companies raising monies in the name of saying that okay, you pay every month 3,000 rupees. At the end of 12 months, 36,000 rupees. So you add the gold charges, making charges. We'll give you a discount. We will add a premium, and then you will get, let's say, 15 grams of gold. So effectively, they are really saving schemes. Whether these are collective investment schemes or not. So there's an interesting history to that. Some guy went to the Bombay High Court and said, Bombay High Court, nobody is studying this. You please ban it. But the petition was made in such a bad manner. He said SEBI is doing nothing, RBI is doing nothing, nobody is doing anything, and people will lose money. Bombay High Court rejected it, saying that you have not brought any facts. Then in another case, MMTC, the government company went to SEBI and sought an informal guidance that we are running a gold investment scheme. Are we violating any law? Now in that particular case, it was very, very unique. The facts I don't want to go into more detail in case of lack of time. But SEBI said, fine, what you are running is not really a collective investment scheme, but that decision itself should be a guideline for other people. That if you are not having this condition, then you will run forward. Now, SEBI has not really acted on this. I really feel they should have gone into the market and investigated. I'm sure most of these are violating because you are paying your hard-earned money. After 3 years, you don't know whether suppose a jeweler or whoever a company is not there, what will happen? Who is regulating? Fortunately, in a different way, these people got stopped. Companies Act 2013 and acceptance of deposits rules. There are certain provisions. The way they are worded, if you are having a scheme more than 12 months, then you will not be able to run. That is the interpretation which companies, at least conservative companies do, and they have stopped their scheme and they are refunding them. But I am told other companies are still going on. So this is probably another small scam in that. There are so many other regulations. Time will not permit me to go into all these. Stock brokers, alternative funds, mutual funds, FI, that is now FPI, now bankers, so on. ESOP's guidelines. This is again we have since 1999, and these are very popular. And this is one chartered accountants even otherwise they are dealing, because they are supposed to give a certificate if whether the ESOP's guidelines have been duly complied with to every company in which they are connected by giving a certificate which has to be taken to the AGM. But other than that, people are not concerned. They should know about this. Is these guidelines give a window. It's, I think, one of the better drafted guidelines, I would say, is that one condition they have put is that ESOPs cannot be issued to promoters. So that is one condition they have put. By putting that, they ensure that most of the price manipulation which could have been possible is gone. So what now they have given a lot of concessional or flexible way of issuing shares to employees, and that way they even protect the interest of the employees. So that, for example, if you issue the shares, if you issue ESOPs to your employees, you cannot change the scheme halfway and in a way which is harmful to the employees. And various parameters are given about how the pricing could be done. Pricing is totally free. You can price the ESOPs in any way which you want. You can give 50% discount, 70% discount, 10% discount, as you wish. Only you have to account it properly. As per two methods are given. One method is the so-called intrinsic value method, whereby you just account for the discount over the vesting period. Suppose if I give a discount of 10%, I have to write it off in my account over the vesting period, so that that comes as an expense. And the other is the Black-Scholes and other methods. These are international methods which are quite complicated. You could adopt those. Particularly internationally connected companies, global companies might go for them. So option is given for both. A lock-in period is there, so that it should not happen that you give shares to your employees and the next day they sell the shares. 1 year lock-in has to be there, whether in case of stock options or share purchase schemes. Again, here the question will come that these are issued in the form of guidelines. So I'm sure one day or the other, the question will come. Suppose somebody has violated this guideline. The best example is, in recent cases, what some companies, companies are creative, more creative, and when they want to raise money through stock markets. What they did was they issued, they used the ESOP schemes, ESOP trust rather, to buy shares from the market. Suppose the market is falling down and they want to increase the price of the shares. So they gave money from the company to this trust, and these trusts started buying shares from the market. Now that is wrong, that is reduction of capital. You cannot use that's a basic, we have all learned in companies that the company cannot use its own fund for buying shares from the market. That is a reduction of capital, and it's a worst way of making the company empty. So what was found by SEBI is that the guidelines are not neither well covering these such things, nor they are in the form of enforceable regulation. So what they did in the interim, what they did was they banned such type of things and told whoever has done it, please stop it and sell the shares whatever you have bought, and revert back and change your trust and your scheme to ensure that this is not happen again. But if these were regulations and if these clauses were there in that, then probably SEBI could have enforced it much better. Informal guidance, this is was used very well earlier. This is, people should use more. Suppose you want to do certain transactions. In tax we have the concept of advance ruling. This is the advance ruling concept of SEBI. If you have got a doubt, if you have got a complicated transaction, if you are worried whether you are violating the regulation or not, you can go to SEBI and you can seek its opinion, and if whatever the opinion is there, it has got a certain level of binding. It is not totally binding. It's not. But as far as I have seen in the last 10 odd years, which the scheme has been in place, whatever SEBI has given the advice that okay, your transaction is correct and you can go ahead and there is no violation, will not act against you, they have followed that. But some conservative companies are concerned that there is no very clear binding nature of this particular informal guidance. The word itself is informal guidance. It's not even, it's a guidance. It's not even ruling, and it's informal. But still, it's much better, and it's so cheap. You pay 25,000 rupees to SEBI, and will give its advice in writing, and generally within 6 weeks is their own limit. Sometimes it's given even earlier. So this is something which more companies and even other entities should use. They are using it also, but it's worth using. Securities lending and borrowing, and just running through. The whole idea was that suppose I am an investor and I got 1 lakh shares of, let's say, Reliance, and I'm comfortable about this. I don't want to sell these shares for the next 3 or 4 years. But there is somebody who is slightly bearish on that, and he wants, today short selling you cannot do. If I sell shares in the market, I have to give delivery. So if I don't have shares, how I can be bearish? So SEBI wanted to, they replace this Badla and Unda Badla. So this is that, Unda Badla, which they made into a scheme. And they said, if I want to lend my shares, if somebody wants to borrow my shares, I can lend to that person. He will sell the shares in the market when the price falls down, as he anticipates. He will buy at a lower price, make profit, and return me my shares and give me certain charges for borrowing the shares. And if of course the price has shot up against his judgment, then he has to suffer the loss. If he has sold at 1000 rupees and the price has become 1100 rupees, he has to buy back at 1100 rupees, suffer that 100 rupees loss, and suffer that, and of course pay my charges even then. That was that. But suppose a stranger comes to me, or I don't have so many friends, whom I can easily give 1000 shares, some valuable shares. So how do I go? And somebody wants to borrow, he would not have also known what is the safety that particular person will return. So what SEBI ensured is that let's put stock exchange in between, and let's register certain people as registered intermediaries who will ensure that the stock exchange will ensure that the shares will go back to the lender. So that is what SEBI tried to do, but SEBI did it in such a a simplistic way. They said initially when it started, they said only 7 days of stock lending should be allowed. So there should be a person who should borrow the shares for 7 days. In that 7 days, the price movement should happen, and then he should return me the shares. So 7 days was too short, probably that is why it never worked. Then it was increased to 3 months. Now it is 1 year. Even today, it is not really picking up. There are many other complications. What will be the tax treatment? What will be the accounting treatment? What will be, whether it will be treated as, for example, as a deposit under Companies Act, and so on. There are various complications. So it is there as a law. It is somehow not picking up. It is there if you want to use it, but somehow it is not picking up on the large scale. Investigation. SEBI has got very wide powers of investigation. It can, issue summons to any person who is connected with the stock market and bought or sell shares or dealing in any way, an intermediary. It will ask, it will take a personal statement, take a statement on oath. So violation of that will amount to perjury. It will ask for documents. It can do search and seizure. Now, the government wanted to give SEBI powers whereby normally a search and seizure, the saying is a man's home is his castle. Nobody should be allowed to enter it. Particularly authorities should not have powers to enter it without there should be some regulatory protection. So earlier the law was that a magistrate would authorize the SEBI's concerned officer to carry out a search and seizure, and for that naturally the person would have to convince the magistrate that see there are certain documents lying there, if I don't go and seize them, that person will destroy them, tamper them, whatever it is. So SEBI, the law was going to be changed whereby instead of magistrate, the power would have gone to the chairman of SEBI. So it would have been an involved whole thing where chairman would give the authority to his officer and he will go and seize, carry out search and seizure. And that would have been, I think, violative probably of our constitutional framework where the judiciary has to have interference in such matters. So there was an ordinance made, that was amended again, and finally what has been passed in August, there the chairman's power has been taken away and magistrate power has been restored. There have been fine changes, but still SEBI has got powers to obtain records as per the new act from elsewhere. Phone tapping, can it do it? If you see the US cases of Rajaratnam and Rajat Gupta and so on, they got investigated mainly because of proper phone tapping. So they could record what was happening in what they were talking about on the phone. Today, whether SEBI has got now powers under the new law of phone tapping per se seems to be doubtful. But they really wanted full powers of phone tapping. I don't think fully it has been given. Apart from investigation and so on, many orders can be passed. We'll see penalty later on. Very wide powers are there. They can pass interim orders. They need not even give you an opportunity. They can pass straight away on order and give a post-order hearing, which is very common. They can pass various preventive, remedial, and protective action. A good decision to go through is, Zenith Infotech's case. This is again, as an independent director or as an audit committee member, this is a case which everybody should. Really read it. In that particular case, Zenith, very briefly, Zenith Infotech made an excessive issue, and probably it seems that they were unable to repay these excessive. So what they did was, They went to the shareholders, they said that we will sell our undertaking, certain businesses,